I hope in the Lord to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. So basically, Paul wanted up-to-date news on these people at Philippi. His plan was to send Timothy to them, and Timothy would find out how they were, and Timothy would bring the news back. I want to send Timothy to you. And then we have this incredible statement, I have no one else like him. I have no one else like Timothy who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. Now, I don't know if you're like me, and I have to admit this, there are a number of people who I have a genuine interest in. Sometimes with some people, I ask how they are, I ask how their family is doing, I ask how their job is going, because that's the polite thing to do. It's not a genuine interest, actually. It isn't a genuine interest. It's the polite thing that you do in conversation. And there's nothing wrong with it. As a limited human being, and I have to recognize all of us are limited human beings, it's very difficult for us to take a genuine interest in a wide range of people. We can't. That's not possible for us. There are a number of people who are close to us, a number of people we have regular contact with, maybe our next door neighbors, maybe the people we work with, some of the people in our church. We have a genuine interest in those, right? And sometimes in the past I felt very guilty about not having a genuine interest about lots of other people. But, I can't do it. I really can't do it. I can't take a genuine interest in 3,000 people. It's totally impossible for us. Now here Timothy had a genuine interest in the Philippians. He really did. Now, fair enough. What happened, if you remember, I think on Paul's second missionary journey, he circumcised Timothy so he could take him with him. And he did actually, on that second missionary journey, take Timothy up to Philippi. And Timothy was there when Paul first preached the gospel in Europe and saw those initial converts at Philippi, and maybe they just hit it off together. They hit it off together. You do that with some people, don't you? You meet some people and you get on with them absolutely great. Right from the word go, and you become friends and you care about each other for the rest of your life. But here I have no one else like Timothy who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. Remember what he said in chapter 2, verse 4? Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Timothy looked to the interests of the Philippians. Somehow or other, these groups had bonded together. And now goes on to say in verse 21, for everyone looks out for his own interests. Well, that's true. Everyone looks out for his own interests. Yes, you all do. I do. Look out for our own interests. And as I pointed out earlier, in verse 2, each of you should look not only to your own interests, because you are going to do that, but also to the interests of others. Right? So, we mustn't deny, there's nothing wrong with looking out after your own interests. That's right, but it shouldn't stop there. For everyone looks out for his own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ's interests are much broader, much bigger than our interests, and we have a small part to play in that. But that Timothy has proved himself because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. They knew that because Paul was there with Timothy the first time that he visited Philippi. They knew Timothy, and they obviously loved him and respected him. I hope therefore to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. So as soon as I get the decision, as soon as I've appeared before the Senate, as soon as I've appeared before Caesar's court, and I've got the decision, I'll send Timothy straight away. So you will know the decision absolutely straight away. And I am confident in the Lord that I myself will come soon. Paul was confident that he would be released. Okay, he's very confident that he will be released. Although in verse 17, but even if I am poured out like a drink offering, and you get this in this letter, parts of this letter is saying things like, I'm going to come soon, but then parts of the letter are saying, even if I'm not released, even if I'm put to death, even if I am poured out. And so it's a very, very human letter. It's a human letter in which one point he's saying that he's confident he's going to be found not guilty, and then at the back of his mind is always the chance that I am going to be found guilty. You know, and you get this feeling which shows it's very, very human man. But if you think about Timothy, I did actually write a booklet called Timothy the Man. And if you follow the life of Timothy, it's very interesting how he starts off. Obviously, he was probably possibly saved at Paul's first missionary journey. He's not mentioned. And then when he comes back on Paul's secondary missionary journey, he's obviously got very high status in his local church. Paul circumcises and takes him with him. And he's there throughout most of Paul's second missionary journey, and he's there on a third missionary journey, and here now Paul is in prison and Timothy is with him, and this is very, very high praise of Timothy. You see, and then you read 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, and you think, what's gone wrong? What's gone wrong? Timothy's gone off the boil. Something, when you read 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, you see Paul pleading with Timothy. Come on, stir up that gift within inside you. Come on, get back to teaching. Come on, do the work of an evangelist. Come on. And something's gone wrong with Timothy. We might touch on that a bit later. But there's a lesson for us in that, you know. When I was younger Christian, I used to look around at some of those old people in church that used to sit there and do practically nothing. And I used to look at them and think, God, look at them. Now I'm getting to that stage myself. And you're thinking, yeah. But the fact is, I've also gone through life. And I have gone through, and unfortunately, I have seen Christians who have been keener, more energetic, and better Christians than I am fall away. You know, fall away. And I have great respect for those older people who are still worshipping the Lord. Absolutely. They may not be doing much, but they have run their race. They've stayed the course. They're still there. They're absolutely still there. Timothy is a lesson to us all. Be very careful. You don't go off the boil. We'll come back to him in a moment. Then he comes on to Epaphroditus, verse 25. But I think it necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus. Epaphroditus was obviously seemingly from Philippi. My brother, my fellow worker, and my fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. Now what had happened is the Philippians were actually an excellent group of people who supported Paul throughout his ministry. And he says elsewhere, nobody supported me. Nobody sent gifts like you. And he says about them that, you know, they often looked out to find out where Paul was so they could send him money so he could spend his time preaching and teaching. Not only in the synagogues on the Sabbath day, but also in the marketplaces and the speakers' corners and things like this during the course of the week. Of course, if Paul didn't have any money, then he would actually resort to tent making or tent mending so that he could, you know, earn enough money to pay his rent and buy his food and things like this. But of course, if he was doing his tent work, then he couldn't be out there preaching and teaching. So the Philippians in many ways kept him going and kept him going. And you say, you know, you share in the gospel. You share in the work of evangelism, he says, because you're doing this. However, because of this long period of time, the Philippians had lost where Paul was. Because, as I said, he'd been 2 years in prison in Caesarea. Then he had gone on this ship, and the ship had been shipwrecked, and he got stuck on Malta for 3 months, and then they eventually got to Rome, and the Philippians didn't really know where he was. And then they found out that he was in Rome, and then they send this gift with Epaphroditus. So he says, you know, you sent him to take care of my needs. They had sent another gift to Paul. For he longs for all of you, and he is distressed. Epaphroditus is distressed because you heard he was ill. Yes, he was ill. Indeed, in verse 27, he was ill and almost died. Epaphroditus was ill, so ill that he